I'm going to tell you why evolution is the only explanation for the origins of life here on Earth. And by the end, you'll have no confusion as to why. For anyone who values the scientific process, evolution is the only correct answer, because it's based on observable evidence, logical reasoning, and mountains of scientific research. Creation relies on religion and the questionless environment created by blind faith, old stories, and a stubborn refusal to acknowledge facts. If we have fossils, DNA, and natural selection on one side, and because the Bible says so on the other, it's not hard to see which argument holds up in any clear-thinking mind. And despite overwhelming evidence, creationism still has millions devoted to it. How could that still be in the 21st century? Is it because it's simpler and more comforting to believe in divine magic than to embrace the complexity of science? Let's unpack this. The beauty of evolution is its clarity and logic. Charles Darwin's scientific book, On the Origin of Species, published in 1859, provided a framework to understand how species change and adapt over time. It's a process that's been observed and tested repeatedly. Look at the finches on the Galapagos Islands, whose beaks have adapted based on available food sources. Look at the fossil record, which shows a gradual progression of species over millions of years. Look at modern genetics, which confirms that all living organisms share a common ancestry. Evolution isn't a wild guess. It's a tapestry woven with evidence from multiple scientific disciplines. Creationism, on the other hand, doesn't rely on evidence. It relies on faith in ancient texts written by people who believed the earth was flat and the sky was a dome. Sure, those stories have cultural and historical value, but they're not exactly peer-reviewed science. The creationist argument often boils down to, life is too complex to have happened by chance, so God must have done it. But that's not an explanation, it's a cop-out. Complexity doesn't mean divine intervention, it means nature's been at work for billions of years. Take the human eye, a favorite example of creationists. How could something so complex just evolve, they ask? The answer? Gradually, over millions of years. Simple light-sensitive cells provided a survival advantage, so they stuck around. Over time, these cells developed into basic eyes, then more advanced ones. The human eye isn't perfect. It has blind spots and is prone to disease, but it's good enough for survival. Evolution doesn't aim for perfection, it's a process of trial and error. Creationism, however, skips all the steps and says, poof, the perfect eye. That's like saying your smartphone just appeared one day without mentioning decades of development and countless prototypes. People who believe in the magic of creation often bring up finding a watch in a forest as an analogy as proof of the existence of a deity. It should not be lost on anyone about the flimsy nature of this argument. It wouldn't make sense to find a mechanical watch in the middle of a biological forest. We find biological humans in a biological environment such as a forest. So to make your watch example equivalent to the human example, you should say that it's like finding a watch in the middle of a store that sells watches, and in this case, your watchmaker is a human being, not a god. Another glaring issue with creationism is its rigidity. It doesn't adapt to new information and is still guided by the same book, the Bible, written by people whose life experience was nothing more than a 500-mile radius from where they lived. Science, by contrast, thrives on questioning and discovery. It even thrives on questioning itself, and often does. When new evidence challenges existing theories, scientists revise them. For example, when fossils of Tiktaalik, a transitional species between fish and land animals, were discovered, they filled in gaps in our understanding of evolution. Creationism doesn't do this. It clings to a single narrative, regardless of evidence. That's not how you build knowledge, that's how you build myths and superstitions. The Church ruled over Europe from the 5th to the 15th century, and we call this 1,000-year period the Dark Ages, and for good reasons. From book burnings to the Inquisition, which saw millions of people tortured and murdered by the Church for even the mere accusation of holding a different belief, it represented 1,000 years of economic stagnation. Imagine where the human race would be if it had those 10 centuries back to use for scientific exploration. And let's not ignore the timeline problem. Evolution provides a coherent timeline backed by radiometric dating, geological layers, and the fossil record. Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, with life appearing around 3.8 billion years ago. Creationism, based on literal interpretations of religious texts, suggests the Earth is only a few thousand years old. That's not just wrong, it's laughably wrong. Radiocarbon dating and other methods have been verified countless times. Ignoring them is like insisting your microwave is a time machine because you don't understand how it works. Then there's the question of adaptability. Evolution explains why species adapt to their environments and why they go extinct when they can't. It shows us how traits like camouflage, speed, and even behavior can evolve to improve survival odds. Creationism doesn't offer an explanation for why polar bears have white fur or why whales have vestigial pelvic bones. Evolution does. It's all about environmental pressures and inherited traits. Creationism just says God wanted it that way. Okay, but why? No answer. Let's address the moral argument often tied to creationism. If we're just evolved animals, doesn't that mean life has no meaning? Seriously? Which creationist PhD thought of that one? If anything, evolution makes life more meaningful. It shows us how rare and precious our existence is. Against staggering odds, life adapted and thrived on this little blue planet. Knowing we're connected to every living thing through a shared evolutionary history is awe-inspiring. Creationism, on the other hand, claims humans are special because God said so. That's not inspiring, that's egocentric. If you need an all-powerful being to give your life meaning, I would suggest that you know not how to live. And then there's the problem of miracles. Creationism often leans on miracles to explain what it can't. But as science has advanced, those miracles keep shrinking. We now understand the water cycle, germ theory, and photosynthesis, and no divine intervention is required. Every time science explains something, creationism retreats to a smaller corner of ignorance. It's a bit like watching someone lose at chess and insist their last pawn is invincible. It's not. It's just the last piece on the board. Creationists also love to say, but evolution is just a theory. Sure, and so is gravity. In science, a theory isn't a guess. It's a well-supported explanation based on evidence. Dismissing evolution because it's a theory shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how science works. Creationism, by contrast, isn't even a hypothesis. It's a claim with no evidence to support it. That's why it requires blind faith to accept it, complete belief without question. Now let's talk about DNA, the ultimate trump card for evolution. Our genetic code shows how closely related we are to other species. Humans share 98.8% of their DNA with chimpanzees and even 60% with bananas. That's not divine design, that's shared ancestry. DNA is like nature's record keeper, documenting billions of years of evolutionary history. Creationism has no explanation for this except for, that's just how God made it. Another low IQ explanation. The debate often boils down to comfort versus curiosity. Creationism is comforting. It gives people purpose and answers without effort. Evolution is curious. It challenges us to ask questions, seek evidence, and embrace complexity. But progress doesn't come from comfort, it comes from curiosity. Evolution has led to advancements in medicine, environmental science, and technology. Creationism hasn't advanced anything. It's stuck in the same place it's been for thousands of years. So, why does creationism persist? Because it's easy. It doesn't require critical thinking or an understanding of biology, geology, or genetics. But just because something is easy doesn't make it right. Evolution isn't always easy to understand, but it's supported by evidence, logic, and a desire to uncover the truth. In the end, the argument isn't really evolution versus creation, it's evidence versus belief. Evolution invites us to explore, question, and grow. Creationism asks us to stop thinking and accept what we are told to us by the Bible written 2 millennia ago, a book that can only be changed by an old papal ruler who lives in an extravagant church in Rome. Which one sounds more human to you? Which one represents a clear-thinking human mind? I'll leave you with this thought, which I think sums up the entire argument. Science and evolution are not guided by emotions or preconceived conclusions. If scientific inquiry one day proved the existence of a God or a divine creator, responsible for everything we see, science would accept and stand by that result. Science isn't driven by an agenda. It has no stake in the outcome. Its only concern is that conclusions are reached through a rigorous process of inquiry, producing answers that are replicable, testable, and grounded in evidence. Does religion do the same? I think you know the answer.